missed this awesome desk.
You're in Oklahoma City?
No, I'm in Springfield. I leave
Oh,
Sunday.
jeez.
I'm selling furniture in Springfield. Would you like a desk? It's lovely. It's huge.
All right, you're good to go.
Thanks, Josh. And Josh, I'm sorry, but we do have need for a non-public later, so we'll have to switch over.
Yep,
Thank you.
already set up. You're good.
Great. All right, with that, I would like to call to order the regular Norwich School Board meeting of April 7th. And our first item of business is the agenda review. I think it's pretty straightforward tonight, but do any board members or administrators have anything they'd like to adjust, add, remove? Okay, not seeing any. Let's move on to the next portion of our agenda tonight, which is public input. I see we do have 4 attendees with us tonight, so I'll provide this opportunity for anyone to comment on any matters they do not already see on the agenda. Otherwise, I'd ask people to wait till that agenda item they're interested in arrives. I'll give you a minute to raise your Zoom hand. Okay, not seeing any, we will move right into the reports this evening. And the first report up is the PTO report. And I do see Alexa as our attendee, so I will give Alexa the opportunity to speak. And you should just need to unmute, Alexa, if you'd introduce yourself.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hello, yes, we can.
Hello, I am Alexa Manning, and I am the co-chair and president of the Marion Cross PTO, and also a parent of a 6th grader. And good evening, everybody. Let's see. We had bingo night last week, no, week before last, I guess, technically. And we were super excited to be able to host bingo night this year. It was a little bit near and dear to our heart because it was the first PTO event that got canceled due to COVID last year. So we were able to do an online version using some software developed by one of these great companies that's come in and figured out how to do things during COVID. And it was a huge success. And we played 6 rounds of bingo, and we had prizes ranging from Dan and Witt's gift certificates to things that were donated from the rec department, t-shirts and caps. And then we had a parent donate some really cool dinosaur banks that she had done a photo shoot for and ended up with all of these leftover banks. And it was really a great time. It went very well. Everybody gave us some great positive feedback. We did it, normally it's a straight up PTO fundraising event. This year we were more concerned on just having a great activity, although we did do some fundraising. And we also used the opportunity to allow the 6th graders to do some fundraising for the 6th grade celebration. Normally they do a whole bunch of bake sales all year long. And of course, they've been completely unable to do that. So we worked with them and came up with this idea of doing goodie bags that people could buy that were sent home in backpacks. And were put together with, just packaged treats, various different packaged treats. And those were done as a fundraiser for the 6th graders. And you were also able, when you signed up for bingo, to just do an additional donation if you wanted to the 6th grade celebration. And when it all was said and done, we raised a net of $553 for the 6th grade celebration crew and $396 for the PTO. The PTO got the proceeds from the selling of the bingo cards, and the 6th grade celebration got the proceeds from the goodie bags and the additional donations. And the various 6th grade committees who are working on end of year things for the 6th grade are figuring out how to divvy up that money. That's not a PTO thing. That's a parents, 6th grade committee kind of thing. So they're working on that. And those PTO funds will go to the spring grants, the next round of spring grants. And it was actually so much fun, and we got so much great feedback that we are going to do it again. So we are going to have a 2nd round of bingo on Friday night, April 23rd. The cards that we bought, you buy them in big boxes, and they're not physical cards, but big bunches, and you can use them for 30 days. So everybody who paid for cards for the last round will be able to play again for free And anybody who would like to join in can buy additional cards. And we're going to do the goodie bags again. So sixth graders will get together and actually put together those goodie bags. And they did actually drop-ins and pictures and some little art that went in with the goodie bags. And they're going to do those again. So we'll have another opportunity. And that's on April 23rd. If any of you want to play, let me know. We'll send you the link. You can get signed up. So that really was a great event. We felt really, really happy about it. Other fun things, we have a date now for the Spring Bike to School Day, and that will be happening on May 5th. We'll do a relatively speaking, the same route that we did this fall, although we're going to add an extra loop at the end to give people more of a chance to bike together. And of course, things may change a little bit with all of this updated guidance. I certainly don't think it'll need to be more restrictive than it was this fall, but maybe we can make a few changes to bring people a little bit more together, but we'll see, depending on what the guidance is, both, the state guidance and of course any SAU and COVID committee guidance, but there will be a Bike to School Day on May 5th. We'll have another round of Spirit Wear coming up soon, putting that together. The spring PTO grants will open, the application for that will open this week, a little bit later this week, probably tomorrow, actually. Those grants, of course, can be submitted by any members of the MCS community. So not just teachers and administration, but also parents or students. We do ask if parents and students are doing something that they try to do it in conjunction with a teacher so that they know that it's something that the school or the teachers actually want, but they're welcome to submit that. So I will have an update on that as that progresses. And related to the grants, PTO co-chair Stephanie Hamilton and I have worked on an update to the process by which the Finance Committee reviews and decides on the PTO grants. So we had originally suggested some pretty significant updates, ended up scaling those back and compromising on some of those with some smaller updates that were more comfortable for the current members of the Finance Committee, who most of whom have served on that committee for quite a while. So in the end, we have what I would say is definitely more clarity about both the process and the criteria that we use for those grants. So those updated policies were voted in by the PTO executive board. So the two co-chairs, the secretary and the treasurer last week. And we're gonna test them out, give them a run during the spring grant round. And we anticipate that those will work well. And that is all I have, unless anyone has any questions.
Great. There's a lot going on. Thanks very much, Alexa. Thanks for
Sure.
keeping up the traditions, even if they're online. But it's good to hear that Bike Day's happening too. So thank you for that. And lots of great fundraising going on too. Any questions for Alexa? All right. Well, thank you again, Alexa. And I'm sure we'll
You're
be
very
in touch.
welcome.
Bye now.
Bye.
Next up on our agenda, continuing with the reports, is Principal Ghan's report.
All right. Well, I'll start with enrollment. So we have 293 students currently enrolled in person and remote. We do have, when we come back from April vacation, I believe 6 of our remote students will be coming back to in person. And now we're sort of on a case-by-case basis because we're reaching capacity in some of our rooms to be able to fit safely. So we've been talking with families as they've been making that decision about whether we can do that or not. Let's see. Homeschoolers remain the same. We've begun to have enrollment for next year. We have 24 students who enrolled for the pre-K. So far, we have 28 kindergartners who've enrolled. And then there's just a small portion of other families who have either moved in or know they're moving in who have enrolled in other grade levels. So that's been helpful with planning purposes. And then the bulk of my report through our PBIS partnership, we get access to staff, student, and family climate surveys. So Greg facilitated giving out the survey so that we could just gather some feedback to see how we were doing this year. So I've tried to make this as simple as possible, excuse me, to look at. So the student survey is easy. It's 11 questions. It's only given to students in 2nd through 6th grade. They're just simple statements like, I like school. I feel like I do well in school. The indicators are important to know with this. 4 is always. So if you're a student and you're answering this question, I like school, if you're answering 4, then always. You've never had a day where you felt like, oh, school isn't for me. The 3 is most of the time, 2 is sometimes, and 1 is never. So that we thought that was helpful as a staff when we looked at it, that to get an always all the time, kids have to be in a really great place. So students scored highest. The indicators, my school wants me to do well. Teachers treat me with respect. I feel safe at my school, and there's an adult at school who will help me if I need it. And then the areas where they scored lowest, which still were not nowhere near poor scores, were students in my class behave so that the teacher can teach. I feel like I do well in school, and my school wants me to do well. So this survey was great for us as a staff to look at and kind of hypothesize around why students are thinking and feeling the way they are, and see what we could put in place to make some of those scores bump up a little bit. We also felt good about this being in a COVID year where everything is different. We were satisfied with these scores. And then we did a school climate survey for families. It was broken down into 5 domains: teaching and learning, school safety, interpersonal relationships, institutional environment, and parental involvement. And not surprisingly, where we scored the lowest this year was parental involvement. That was understandable since we don't allow anyone in the building this year. Where parents scored highest was in school safety. So families are feeling like their kids are safe at school, which we took as a compliment in a COVID year where safety is on the top of everyone's list. But also all 4 of the other areas, teaching and learning, scored well, interpersonal relationships, and institutional environment. And you can look at all the indicators after if you want. And then school climate survey for school personnel has the same indicators as for families, well, similar: staff connectedness, structure for learning, school safety, physical environment, peer adult relations, and parental involvement. And where we scored the lowest from staff was physical environment and staff connectedness, which I think staff connectedness has been really hard this year, where we're separated and throughout the building. And then where we scored ourselves highest was school safety and structure for learning. Any questions or thoughts about our survey results?
Neil?
Shauna, I'm curious if you guys, did you look at any of sort of the survey data across all 3 surveys and categories that would seemingly be similar or overlap? Like one of the things that popped up was the student survey question number 2 or 3 versus the parent survey number 3, number 9.
Students treat each other well. My school wants me to do well.
Yeah, so it's I feel like I do well in school and my school wants me to do well in the student survey, compared to question number 9 in the family survey. It says my student feels successful at school. And it seems like, you know, the parents' perception of how their kids feel about school may be slightly inflated versus what the kids are actually reporting out.
Yeah, we looked, the first the PBIS committee looked at the survey results and then put together a presentation for the staff where we discussed it. But we really stuck mainly with each of the surveys, thinking about different constituents. But it would be good for us to look at it in a different way and kind of make connections.
Lisa?
Yeah, thanks. I'm just thinking about the equity audit from last spring and wondering if there was any identifying information on these surveys where you could disaggregate it a little bit and see if, like, the 504 kids, for instance, were feeling less successful or more successful than other kids. And I don't know if that's possible or if that's helpful, but I find sometimes when things are so either positive or negative, it helps to look at who's saying it within those populations. And I just didn't know if you could, or you plan to, or if you would find it helpful.
Yeah, you can. It does. It depends on whether people chose to fill that part of the survey out, but you can look at demographics. You can look at race. You can look at IEP status. You can look by grade level, by gender. So those are things that we looked at as a staff. But I could bring back some of that because it is interesting to look at. A lot of times those populations are so small that it's hard to really get a lot of good information out of them.
It's almost more anecdotal, but I just was wondering if it could be done and if it would be useful. So,
yeah.
Other questions on the survey for Sean? Sean, I've got a quick one then, just back to the enrollment. You mentioned that you've had 24 request enrollment for pre-K. So are you and Greg and Katie beginning the process then to figure out, because we're talking about 15 actual slots, correct?
Right. So a couple of things with that. We're looking at space. There is another room that fits the criteria for pre-K that would allow us to have 18 students. So we've had the fire marshal come in and look at the space. And now we're working with the licensing department to see if they will allow us to move from 15 to 18. So we're looking at that. And we use that document that I brought to you for criteria of selecting which kids get into our program. So at this point, anyone who has signed up or who is registered knows if they're in the program already, because we gave a deadline, or if they're on the wait list. And they also know what the likelihood is of them getting in if they're on the wait list. And people have been fine with that. A lot of people have said, are you going to have a second program? But because I think they're just used to, at the other grade levels, if we have too many students, we have another teacher. But that ranking list has worked well. There are a couple things that we will do a little different next year, and we'll get our information out much earlier in the season next year. But I suspect we'll probably be full before the school year starts.
Good. Well, thank you for that background. Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you for the report, Sean.
You're welcome.
And let's move down our agenda this evening, which brings us to the business requiring discussion. And as always, we have our facilities update, and actually probably just carrying on with the conversation. Jamie, are you talking to this licensing regulations we've got here first? Okay.
That is not my expertise there. That would be Greg and Sean. Although I do know about the needs and what we're going to be accomplishing.
Okay, Sean, were you going to address this then? And
yes, I can.
okay.
I was looking at it to see what I'm addressing. So a couple of the things that we looked at for preschool, there are some regulations that we have to have in place. One is a fence. If you noticed, the fence that was used for the preschool came down. We were going to try to patch it together for another year, but when Tim went out to do that, it was pretty obvious that patching it together was less safe than just taking it down. So we took that down. Tony and I have been working on a plan for putting up a fence that would go around the whole playground by the kindergarten, first grade area, and then a small inner fence that would be used just for pre-K. So that's in the works. And I think of all of this, that is the only thing we have to address. The rest we've addressed already. We do need to clean up like our outdoor space. Some of the outdoor play materials that we have are not approved for preschool licensing, so some of that will just need to go. And that piece that's against the bricks, the stage area, is actually against fire code, so we're going to have to do something different with that piece as well. But mainly, we just need to put a fence up that meets these guidelines, and Tony and I are working on that.
Okay, good. Thank you. Any questions on this before we move into the rest of the facilities update? Okay, not seeing any. Jamie, did you want to lead off with the rest of it?
Sure. We are still on a holding pattern at the state of Vermont level with our request for expanded grant funds to continue the HVAC unit, the rooftop units. We were hoping it's a competitive grant process that will be opened up for some of the remaining CRF funds. That's where we got the other monies to do the 4 units that we replaced. And so we've written another grant proposal to do all the rest of them. And that's in a holding pattern. The state of Vermont has not yet set free the funds to the Efficiency Vermont people. So we'll keep you posted. If they don't release them soon, nobody is going to be able to use them this summer just because of the timing of setting all of that up and getting all of the orders in. Although we did amazing things in 30 days in December, so we'll see what happens. We have a request for proposals out for, actually we have a few of them, and one is pending because I need to read through it, and that will go out hopefully tomorrow. The first one that is out with regards to the Norwich School District is an RFP to replace the fire alarm system, bring it to update it. The one we have is in working order, but it's very old, it's outdated. And so we had been talking about that now for, well, since I got here probably. And we did budget for it this year. We held off on that in the fall because we didn't know what was going to go on with COVID expenditures and funding. But we are actively pursuing proposals now. That's a sealed bid process. It's on our SAU 70 website and has been advertised in the newspaper on 3 different, or will be on 3 different occasions. It's already been advertised once, I think maybe again today, and then it will be done again on Friday. There'll be walkthroughs next Monday with Tony at the school location. The other RFP that is already posted, one has already been completed for technology, and that was for some hardware purchases. The one that's posted right now is for services. And that's for cabling services at all 3 locations. And that's been advertised as well. The phone one doesn't affect you because your phone system has already been updated with a grant, so that's good. What else is going on? We have been discussing, as always, our septic system issue. We just finished our pumping of the season. We pumped the tanks from December 1 through March 31st. The cost was approximately $14,000 for the 4 months. We opened up the field again this week. I think yesterday, I think Tony opened up the field, or is going to open it up today. So we'll see how it goes. We don't expect to have any issues. All of the leach fields and the system work appropriately when the weather is good and the ground is not frozen around us. And the frost is starting. The frost has come out of the ground in most locations and areas that aren't heavily wooded. In some of the heavily wooded sections and locations, we still have some frost remaining. Although the days have been beautiful, so hopefully it's coming out soon. We've been in contact with our engineer and engineering firm and the hydrological firm, who will be, they're looking to schedule some sampling in 2 weeks. So I think it's the week of April 19th, right? That's, I think, the Monday we come back. So you may see them out and about around Dresden. We're going to be doing samples at Dresden Fields, possibly at Huntley Meadows. I'm trying to discuss things with the town at this point about ownership of the property down there. Also, we've contacted a couple of private owners to see if any of the ideas we have with regards to how to go about taking care of this issue for the future, to see if they might be interested. I hesitate to make that public right now because we've not heard back from them. Let's see, what else is going on in your school over there, Sean? The fiber project, right?
Carpet in the multi.
Oh yes, carpet in the multi. I'm sorry, right? That's right. They started stripping out.
No, they haven't started yet.
Okay, it's coming. I know everybody's very excited. So I think that, yes, this coming week coming up, I think they're going to try to start getting in there. I know that we have picked somebody and it's on the horizon there. So a lot of things going on. We're absolutely playing catch up a little bit because we held off on projects. Last summer we couldn't get contractors in, due to the situation. And so we're trying to catch up with all of the projects that we had scheduled. But we're moving forward. Busy place.
Very much so. Thanks for the overview, Jane. Does anyone have any questions with regard to any of the ongoing work or planning facilities related? Okay. Not seeing any, we'll go to our other item we have had on, but this is one I do hope we will be able to remove soon. I'm sure Robin is too, but the COVID-19 committee update. Thank you.
No, I hope that's the case. Thank you. Well, this week I've been preparing a letter to send out to families prior to break, hoping that people would still continue to follow CDC guidelines. And it was easy as of 2 days ago in Vermont because there are still quarantining guidelines. But as you all probably know, at this point, Governor Scott updated his guidelines yesterday to begin Friday. And so there's no more quarantine requirement for domestic travel, which will go into place. So I'm still preparing another letter and just strongly continuing to recommend that we follow more of a modified CDC version guideline because we're still concerned that people have not all received their second vaccinations and we're worried about the increasing numbers around our areas. So hopefully we'll continue to move forward after break and we'll see a similar trend to what we saw in the past, but we are concerned about that with the opening of travel. So that's really been the biggest thing recently.
Thank you for the update, Robin. Any questions for Robin? Okay, thank you again. Not seeing any questions, we'll move on to our next item of business, which is retreat topics and planning. And this is obviously something we'll talk about across all of the boards. And I think we've got some new information we'd like to share based on our discussion we had at the Four Chairs meeting earlier this week. I'll admit to have been the one to propose we push the retreat off to the summertime, but Jay is so gung-ho, he's interested in moving that up. So I'm actually going to turn it over to Jay to talk about a potential plan here, and then we can talk about dates and topics.
Sure, and I'm going to cross that off of my superintendent's report. We've been talking about the strategic plan now for 2 years. We definitely put it to the side, and I'm just very antsy to get going. And when Robin joined us, the idea was that since we had her as a key member of the team to focus on curriculum development, which is going to be a large part of our strategic plan, she'd be able to help us with facilitation of that process as well. And of course, she came in and became the COVID coordinator instead of the strategic plan helper. So, so we are eager to be able to make that transition and feel confident that by May, which is typically when we do our board retreat, that even if we do an abbreviated or maybe a Zoom based, it'd be nice if we could be in person. That was discussed at the Four Chairs. But as long as we could get a chance for us to sit down as a board, talk about who among the board members are interested in working on various subcommittees and committing to a timeline, we need to get this done. And it's kind of, we're excited because we have a much clearer picture now of what needs to be done. So I think as far as giving direction to those subcommittees, it'll be an easier process. It won't be as much research and investigation as it seemed to be back when we started. One thing that remains is we still need to do that vision process, which we've decided will be a portrait of a graduate or portrait of a student who completes Marion Cross or RMS. So that still remains to be done. And interestingly, given what we've been going through in terms of our mutual study about issues of equity, and in fact, all of our diversity, equity, and inclusion work, that's going to change what would otherwise have been a very different portrait of graduate, I think, and help inform the work. So we're really looking forward to that. And the thought of waiting till summer, while I understand and I really appreciated, to me, that puts us even further behind, because then we're running up against budget season again. And it essentially puts implementing a strategic plan another year beyond that out. And I think if we can at least get started in May and get the committees working over the summer, at least some of the priorities that we establish in the early parts of the strategic planning process could actually be considered in the budget process. So that's kind of the thinking there. The Four Chairs are actively thinking about who should head up different committees, and so ready to volunteer their peers for various duties. I'm kidding. We are going to be seeking help, and it's going to take a commitment, and it's going to be great when it's done. I don't know when the last time was that we had an SAU wide plan, but we're dying for it. Our experience through COVID has really highlighted the need. Our equity work has pointed directly at things like documenting the curriculum as key needs and sort of essential foundational work for any real action with regard to equity. And our teachers have noticed in trying to prepare remote lessons and trying to make sure that we're on the same page, that there's a real need for that kind of work. So it's really, to me, it's exciting. It's not daunting. It's going to be roll up your sleeves work. And I'm ready. Robin's ready from the central office. And we've been talking about it for so long, it's time to actually do it.
Great, thank you, Jay. I agree, because actually I can't remember the last time the SAU I don't know if the SAU has done SAU-wide plan. At least it hasn't been in the last 12 to 13 years. So I look forward to starting off this effort as well. Kelly.
Yeah, did I unmute? Yeah, I unmuted. I know, Jay, at the Four Chairs, we talked a little bit about investigating what, if any, resources the VSBA might have. When I went onto their website, they have a whole section on this work. And I thought if you and Robin were preparing a general scope of things to present to the board at the retreat, like you had thought, that would be a great place to start. I don't even know if we can ask them for piecemeal bits like we had seen at the presentation they made, but it seemed like a wealth of information was there just for boards to get this thing off the ground. So that's one comment I wanted to make, but the other push I'd like to make that I brought up at the Four Chairs too is that if we could do it in person, we could potentially do it maybe at the Richmond. I don't know how Tim would feel about it, but at the library again, I think we'd have more productive involvement from my perspective than we might have over Zoom, if it's possible. So I'm just going to put those two things out again.
Thanks, Kelly. Other questions or comments, recommendations? Lisa.
Hi, I love that we're doing this in May. I would second, if we can at all do it in person, that would be great. And then having never been to a board retreat before, I just have a question. Would the strategic plan be the only agenda item, or will there be other things that we might try to accomplish?
I know strategic plan is number one on the list. I don't know, Jay, have you thoughts on other things you might like to add? I mean, we normally plan it out in advance and get board member contributions to it. Obviously, strategic plan would be one of them. Jay, have you heard others?
No, and I think that's the purpose of the agenda item that we're discussing right now was the notion of sort of brainstorming a list of things that you might be interested in talking about. And again, when we do the board retreat, it's all the boards. We in the past have in fact, I think 2 retreats ago, we brought in our legislative delegations from both sides of the river. My first one, before I was even officially employed here, we actually did it at the Hurlburt Center and it was more of a team building exercise. And then the last one that we actually held, on a really warm day in the spring at Storrs Pond, and covered a variety of issues. We talked about strategic planning, but we also talked about things like conflict of interest and some other things that we're pressing to the board. So I think strategic planning certainly is a big action item for us. But if there's anything else that the board believes that sort of a dedicated amount of time would be best used for, we should contemplate it, talk about whether we can fit it in.
Right. And it is a far-reaching topic because we've got about 4 subcommittees we've discussed, including in it, that would capture, I think, most things that we would want to discuss. But Lisa, did you have anything specific in mind you wanted to propose during this meeting?
No, other than I just finished an equity committee meeting right before this and was thinking that if it's not part of the strategic planning process, which I know equity will be addressed, but just how to structure how the equity work happens next year might be a good conversation to have. Like how the committees could work together, if there's a board committee and a school committee, and it feels like if we're all in the same place, it would be an excellent opportunity to gain some clarity around that. So.
Well, and that was another topic of conversation during the 4 chairs meeting too, with regard to the equity committee. So I'm not sure, just my opinion, I'm not sure if the retreat is the place or the next SAU meeting is the place to have that discussion. I would push towards the next SAU committee, SAU meeting, as that is the board that will oversee that committee work. But again, I'm one member, so happy to hear others' thoughts on that too. And I'm not the chair of that committee. Neil.
Yeah, and I will, just to piggyback off on some stuff that you were just talking about. We have traditionally in the past used the retreat in part to help form what the board goals are going to be for the following year. To the extent that I think personally that the strategic plan ought to be the one or the top priority for the next year. I think it helps with the goal setting and everything like that. The other piece that Lisa brought up might be worth entertaining at the retreat, in the sense of understanding board roles and responsibilities and how that filters then through goal setting and the strategic planning process, so that you can have discussions about, is it okay to have, X number of board members on a committee that you consider to be an admin committee, and what implications does that have as far as public meeting law and stuff like that goes. A question for those of you that were at the 4 chairs, though, is have you had any consideration? We always have this weird dynamic that if we're going to try to do sort of strategic level planning, and we're doing it at the SAU, understanding that we've actually got 2 or 3 other boards technically to deal with as well too, and how the relationships are going to be handled amongst the different entities, to make sure that we're all sort of at least heading in the right direction. But I guess per statute maintaining a little bit of autonomy. Plus, I think that there might be some issues that are related to each of the particular districts that might only be for those districts.
Jay.
Well, Neil and Tom, I'm wondering if, similar to the way that we've been doing policy, we have our SAU level committee, but then whatever's promulgated in that committee is then distributed out to the individual boards for their consideration and approval. I'm sort of envisioning the same sort of thing with strategic planning. We'll all be involved in the generation of the plan, but then maybe it makes sense to then have each individual board either have its own time and space to work on parts of the plan that are unique to them, but then ultimately to adopt the plan as individual boards.
I think that makes sense. I think having that discussion, obviously, too, during the retreat will make sense, and have some of that filter out of there as well. I mean, obviously, I think we're going to need to do that for, especially when you get to things like facilities and then aspects of the curriculum too are certainly going to need individual board involvement there too. Any other questions from the board? I do see a hand up. Or Neil, I'm sorry, were you finished?
Yeah, no, sorry. One more thing, which just to bring it up, because I think it might warrant some discussion, in particularly based on how things end up in the legislature this year, but implementation of the weighting study in Vermont could have quite a sizable impact, not just on Norwich, but also Norwich as it participates in Dresden. And I think we might ought to be thinking about that, understanding, the possible outcomes there and how we might begin to start to address those things.
Excellent idea. And hopefully we'll have more information on that soon. Other questions from the board or administrators at this time? I do see a question in the attendees. I'm going to take that, but Jay, I'll then come back and maybe we can figure out a way to map out a timeline for figuring out when we can meet with regard to the retreat. But let me take this question first from Patrick Gordon. I'm going to give you the opportunity to talk, and please just introduce yourself and ask your question or provide your comment.
All right, can you guys hear me?
We can.
All right, I'm outside. I'm Patrick Gordon. I teach special education. Next year I'll be teaching 2nd grade. I actually did the portrait of a graduate, portrait of a student work 2 years ago in my previous position, and I'm really excited we're going to do it. It's like one of the best processes I've ever been through as an educator, and thinking about why we do what we do and why, our why as a community, what we value and what we expect of the institution of school. And so I'm pretty excited for it because I think it's going to be one of those things that helps drive a lot of our mission and our vision, especially as teachers. And just getting that kind of stuff in place is really, it's a formidable foe. And I admire that we want to run towards it because I really love getting that why out of us. So I'm excited for it. So thank you for bringing that up, Jay.
Great. Thanks very much for your comment, Patrick, and for your work on the portrait. All right. Back to the board administrators. Any other follow-up on this discussion at this point in time? I think if not, Jay, then our next step is probably to solicit any more feedback between now and I guess a few weeks from now to see what we could add to an agenda. And would it make sense from your point of view to maybe set up a doodle poll or some other way of asking members for their availability? And maybe later May when it's actually warm out would be nice to do. I don't know.
Yeah, well now, see, I was sort of prescient when I organized the last one at Storrs Pond because we want to be outside to make sure that we're safe and well ventilated. But yeah, later May could be great. And I don't necessarily want to wait to have this conversation with each individual board. So maybe it is the sort of thing that we could do as a poll by, if we're mindful of open meeting law, I could at least work on trying to get a calendar together ahead of the board meetings, which I think is fine. And then go from there. And we'll need to think about time too. If we want to make it a half-day session, all-day session, weekend, whatever the will of the board is that way will be important as well. And it doesn't have to be a single day.
Okay, I'm just taking a look at SAU meetings that are coming up too. So we do have a Monday, May 2nd meeting, but I guess that might be a little bit late in the process. Was that in terms of finalizing things for agendas? Is that what you're thinking is?
Yeah, I also think that we can work together with the 4 chairs, and the individual chairs can poll their board members we can work on scheduling that way as well. And of course, we can rely on Ryan as well.
Okay, sounds good. Then why don't we leave it with board members sending along any thoughts on additional agenda items. Obviously, strategic plan is going to be on there and going to be number 1 on the list. But when we get to the point where we'll need to decide on dates, timeframes within the days and so on, we'll rely on the chairs to reach out with more information or working with Jay and Ryan on that scheduling process. Sound good? Did I capture that, Jay, or did I misrepresent what you were trying to say?
Not at all.
Okay, good. All right, so if there are no more comments on this, look for more information coming, and please do feel free to reach out with your thoughts. And next on our agenda tonight is reviewing the school board calendar for the 2021 and 22 school year. We have seen this once before. It is posted to the public content. And I don't know, are there any updates that you wanted to provide here? I know that there was some discussion last time in terms of Secretary French looking at trying to get 1 day for the start, but I think you said that there hasn't been progress made on that yet, and so we've got our August 30th start date here as the proposed date.
No, it's interesting. This is a conversation that happens in every state, I think, and we're no exception. And so there was some discussion early on that the administration was interested in sort of mandating a post-Labor Day start to the school year, and actually it was being discussed on both sides of the river. And we, as a Southeast Vermont superintendent group, have been trying to do a better job of coordinating our schedules, our calendars. And that's a sticking point. It's a small number of districts that seem open to the possibility, and most are hesitant to do so. And a lot of it has to do with coordinating our schedules with our regional career and technical centers. That's one piece, and the other is that there's I've learned just in my short time here in northern New England that spring and summer are fleeting. And it seems that people would rather start a little earlier and get out a little earlier in June than pushing the end of school deeper into June. And that seems to be something that holds communities back as well. So there is so far as I'm aware, there's no mandate on the way. If that should change, I think we're okay. I think we can always bring the calendar back for the board to reconsider if something does change at the state level, or even regionally, if a majority of systems around us decide to start after Labor Day, it's something that would be a worthwhile question for the board to consider. We had at least one parent that contacted us who was concerned because we've all been so restricted in our ability to meet, just to gather together to visit loved ones. The thought was it'd be nice to be able to prolong summer and be able to have that Labor Day weekend to spend with family, and that's a compelling argument. But so far we've just the logistics of all of that, and the fact that our neighbors aren't doing that sort of argues against that right now.
And as you mentioned, I think it is a particular challenge when we try to align with the Hartford Career and Tech Center and the 13 schools that feed into that program, that if we were off by as much as a week, that could prove for quite a challenging way to catch up or coordinate for the rest of the year too.
Right. And our region, as far as the superintendents, the Southeast region actually has 2 career and tech centers. And they're not in sync. So the folks that are further south tend to sort of align their calendars, and the folks that are further north align ours. And we haven't found a way to bridge that yet.
Are there any questions on the calendar as you see it in the packet? Lisa?
I am recognizing that might be getting ready to open up a can of worms, and I apologize for not bringing this up the first time the calendar was read. But I am wondering, and this isn't a problem so much at the lower grades, but I have heard repeatedly that for Jewish families with children at the high school, that having school on the high holy days in September is stressful. And I'm just wondering, I don't remember having a conversation about it last year. And I don't know what the conversations in the past have been about that, but it is a critique that I've heard repeatedly over the years. And I just am wondering if there's anything we can do to address that. And again, I recognize it's not as stressful for families who have children in the lower grades, because it's easier to miss a day of school and not worry about missing out on important information that's going to come up on an exam. But for the high school kids, it does appear to be stressful. And I'm just wondering, again, I haven't been part of a conversation about this, and I'm wondering when that should take place. And I recognize probably not now when we're getting ready to vote on it, but it just occurred to me. So thank you.
Jay?
Lisa, that's a good point. It has been a topic of discussion for the board in the past, and I have met with at least one local rabbi, and we have made it essentially an unwritten policy, perhaps, but policy to make sure that we honor the Jewish high holidays in terms of avoiding assigning work. I was told by the rabbi and by some of the folks that were keenly interested in the topic that it's not so much a prohibition of going to school, but it is the doing work, having homework to do during those periods of time are very challenging. Just in the last 48 hours, I received a request from someone from our Muslim community who is requesting that we make similar accommodations for Ramadan and Eid, and we probably should do that as well. What we run into, and I've actually been challenged on this by some staff in the past over the Christian holidays, particularly Christmas. For right or wrong, our federal government recognizes Christmas as a federal holiday, aside from its status as a religious holiday, and so it's this long-standing tradition that happens to be the week that we're off. And in talking with some of our Jewish leaders, they even discussed the fact that the high holidays are more important in their faith than even Hanukkah. And so, yeah, I think we have more to do, a lot more to learn on making sure that we're mindful of all the different religious faiths that we serve. But as far as not having school on those days, we haven't been told that would be something that they would seek, and it would get really challenging for us because we can't simply honor. I think if we did something like that, we couldn't just honor one faith or two or even three. We'd have to honor all religious faiths, and it'd be tough to draw a line. Like, well, if we only have like 3 students who practice this faith, but 13 who practice this faith, we're going to have this day off, but not that day. I think we need to make sure our faculty is aware, and I feel like we've done a fairly good job, at least with the Jewish holidays, and maybe it's something for the policy committee to take a look at, to think about like what accommodations we'll make for students who do have practices that preclude schoolwork on those nights, or tests and that sort of thing.
Thank you. I mean, I appreciate that it's really complicated, and I guess maybe a good place to, I mean, it might be a retreat topic. Hi, Tom, to talk about the calendar and how to recognize religious holidays. But I guess I think a good place to start would just be an open discussion of the fact that those of us who celebrate Christian holidays, we don't have to worry about it. We don't have to worry about getting Christmas off. We don't have to worry about Easter because it always falls on a Sunday. And it just, that seems like a good place to start in terms of talking about what other people are expected or not expected, and the expectations they can have of a school calendar that, you know, as someone who was raised as a Christian, I don't have to worry about. Like, it's pretty much guaranteed that Christmas will not be a school day, nor will Easter. So thanks very much.
Thanks, Lisa. And that is a valuable conversation to have, and one that we should have, and one that I should have thought through, because in my foggy-minded reading of my own agenda here, I realize now that we weren't even planning to talk about the school district calendar, but rather the school board calendar. We're voting on the school district calendar tonight because we did see it last time. So my apologies to all members, administrators, and people in the audience. And that was a valuable discussion, and it will help lead into 6G, where we will actually vote on this year's calendar. That said, I'm going to stay on 5D with the review of the school board calendar. That was me. School board calendar for 21-22, which is indeed posted there, and which we can also address at this time. But thank you, Jay, for the background, and Lisa for the question. And I hope that was somewhat clarifying and helped set some future agenda items for us. That said, you will find the board calendar, starting with the meeting. This one, just so you know, has both the SAU board meetings as well as the Norwich board meetings. Do any board members or administrators have questions about the school board calendar? I have one that and it's more just if someone could jog my memory, and it's with regard to the August meeting of the Norwich board, scheduled for August 19th, Thursday. I think one year we must have moved it to then because of summer schedules and other things. It just seems a bit awkward being where it is. I'm wondering if we should consider keeping the August meeting when we normally would meet, which is that first Wednesday of August. Obviously, if we run into an issue where we're not going to be able to get quorum, I think we could look at rescheduling, but I think it might make more sense to bump that one back to the normal schedule. Does anyone have any opinion about that, or consternation with the possibility of moving it back to that time? Or does anyone remember if there was reason to actually have it at this time other than to avoid some earlier in the summer vacations? Okay. Would anyone mind if I proposed moving that to the first Wednesday of August, which would be, let me see. Yes, Jamie.
Yeah, it's really early for some of the information that we would be discussing. And
In
that happened
terms of,
once before, and we had to have 2 meetings for Norwich in August.
okay, what are the other topics then that you, that
Well,
would be too early?
budget stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm barely at an audit at that. We're just starting audit we're just wrapping up the fiscal year that I'm closing by the first week of August. I mean, that's really a quick turnaround. And I don't mean to be whiny crybaby, but man.
Yeah, okay,
Oh.
yep, we do have draft budget guidelines here, yeah. Jay,
I wouldn't have any problem going to the Wednesday of that week. Although we may have another, that might be the problem. We might have a conflict
might
with
be it.
Hanover.
Yeah,
And the
yeah.
reason for pushing it deeper into August is typically we have, unfortunately, some last minute hires often.
Mhm.
And so one of the reasons we try to push them deeper into August was to give us a little more time to figure out exactly what we had for staff needs.
Okay,
We've always reserved the right to have a special meeting if we needed to, but that seemed to give us enough of a cushion to be able to do that.
I have been convinced. I will not challenge the sketch. I thought it might make it easier just memory wise, but that certainly makes sense and something I should have remembered. So with that, any questions on the schedule as it currently stands in your board docs packet? All right. Not seeing any, let's move down our agenda, and that is the to review the agenda topics, which thankfully Jamie and Jay just pointed out. I probably should have taken a closer look at that when reviewing the agenda itself. So that is also in your agenda or your board docs. And if anyone has any thoughts on items that show up there, suggested agenda topics, anything that needs to be added, move to a different month. Any thoughts on that? Okay, if anything comes up between now and the next meeting, please feel free to get in touch with me and we can consider that then, because both the board calendar and the agenda items will be voted on at the May meeting. All right. Well, this concludes our business requiring discussion. Sorry to throw a little wrench in it and confusion in the last couple of topics there, but let's move on to our business requiring action. We do have it set up as an approval of items B through H by consent. Before we go to that, I do want to request moving H out of it because that is a gift and I'd like to be able to address the gift separately. So if board members are amenable, I'd like to just do the consent agenda B through G. And there are some newer members on our board, but we have gone through the DFA investments before. Does anyone have any questions on that before we just enter it into the consent agenda? It is an annual review. Okay. So if there's no problem with switching from B to H by consent to B to G by consent, I'd be happy to entertain a motion for that. Kelly.
Move to approve items B, C, D, E, F, and G by consent.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Lisa. And I will go around the room. All those in favor, Neil?
Odell, yes.
Kelly?
Hersey, yes.
Lisa?
Christy, yes.
And Garrett?
Yes.
And Camden, yes. And that, thank you very much for that. That brings us to the final item requiring action, which, as I alluded to earlier, is the approval of a donation from the Friends of Hanover Norwich Schools, the one-to-one Chromebook initiative. And you can see more about that at that agenda item 6H. Sean, are you able to speak to this initiative, the proposal and the grant by the Friends of Hanover Norwich?
I can. So Nikki Oni, our tech integrationist, wrote this grant. She had submitted a similar grant at the first round of grants from the Friends of Hanover Norwich, and they didn't have quite enough to fund it. So we're really working hard at Marion Cross School this year to upgrade our technology so that we have more of a one-to-one initiative. and this will buy Chromebook books to help supplement in the second grade. So I believe that it's going to buy us 9 additional Chromebooks.
It says for 11 students in the spreadsheet there.
Then I
Maybe
amended
11.
that to 11.
That's what I thought you meant. Thank you for that. Any questions on this very generous gift? And as you can see from the spreadsheet, the Friends are very generous across all of the district. Okay, not seeing any, I'd welcome a motion to accept this. Kelly?
Move to approve with gratitude the donation from the Friends of Hanover Norwich Schools, $2,964 for one-to-one Chromebook initiative.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Lisa? And all those in favor, starting with Neil
Odell, yes.
and Kelly?
Hersey, yes.
Lisa?
Christie, yes.
Garrett?
Palm, yes.
And Camden, yes. Thank you all, and thank you to the Friends of Hanover Norwich. And with that, we move into our communications and reports for the evening. First up is the report of the chair. And I'll just mention a few things that haven't come up already. First, for those, obviously all of us here know, but those attendees and anyone watching later, just to know that we did have a special meeting earlier in the month to approve of the contract that was settled with the Norwich Teachers Association, which will cover the current year that we're in, as well as the next academic year. So thanks to the teachers negotiators for that and the full union, and for my colleagues on the negotiations committee here too, Jamie and Neil, for coming to a resolution there, and to the board for approving of it. So I think we it was a good ending to a long process, and I want to extend thanks to everyone for their work in that effort. The only other things I was going to reference at this time, and partially because I got my great VSBA mailing today, nice letter, Mr. President. But there was also mention there about the VSBA resolutions, and those are coming up soon. So if folks would read up on that process, either on the VSBA website or in this month's edition of the school board update, we should start considering those in the May meeting, because we would have to decide on them by the June meeting to forward along to the VSBA resolutions committee for consideration at the November conference, which was my other update here, which I also noticed. It seems that the VSBA is optimistic about holding it in person on November 3rd and 4th. And I'm not remembering what I read, but I assume or hope it would be at the Lake Moria Resort again, because that's always a very convenient location for us and a nice place to be for the 2 days of the conference. And for anyone who hasn't been to the in-person one, I strongly recommend it, because it's always filled with lots of great information and training and networking opportunities. So November 3rd and 4th for that, put it on your calendar now. And I'm sure there'll be lots more information coming along in the coming months. I do not have anything more to add at this time. So with that, I'm happy to turn it over to Jay for the superintendent's report.
Thanks, Tom. I just wanted to bring the board up to speed on a couple of items. First off, I just wanted to say that Secretary French at the Agency of Education has been really accessible to superintendents. We've had weekly meetings with him, and he has been very careful to have sort of frank discussions with the superintendents, but then always gives the caveat that unless you see it in writing, it doesn't count. And so he posts a lot of guidance for us. And once we see it in writing, then it becomes essentially policy. He's also been extremely flexible with us as an interstate school district. So most recently, he granted us a waiver for the calculation of instructional time. Typically in Vermont, we only count days, but because New Hampshire also allows the option of hours, he allowed us to defer to New Hampshire law with the calculation of our school year. And that helps us to stay sort of in sync across both sides of the river. And and it was extremely helpful. We otherwise would have had a very protracted end to the school year. And the way it stands now, we'll be able to have all of our students completing school, given hoping that we don't have any more snow days on June 14th. So I'm very appreciative of his flexibility there. There are some things, though, that are particular to Vermont that we must comply with. And one of those is a new requirement that we have called a recovery plan. So I serve as the recovery coordinator, and we'll be putting together a committee to meet the requirements of this provision. One of the first things we'll need to do is needs assessment that we'll have to put together to determine what exactly we need in terms of recovery. What's going to be really nice for us is the fact that we've been able to have in-person learning, and the fact that we've been able to keep our other students who weren't able to participate in in-person learning current through our remote option will mean that we don't have a huge recovery task. I can't quantify that yet because we haven't gone through the needs assessment process, but my guess is that we're going to be in good shape, and that our recovery plan won't be as deep and as challenging as it will be for districts that weren't able to provide in-person instruction for their kids. So that's a real compliment to Sean and the Marion Cross teachers and support staff for doing such a wonderful job this year, and that's again why this has been such a boon for our kids. All of that said, and I'm going to give a whining warning, but we couldn't have a better timed break coming up for our April break. Again, I've told the board before at other junctures in this whole crazy year that we've had that there are times when the stress that people and the system are experiencing becomes palpable, and this is one of those times. I'm keenly aware that our staff are again feeling that sort of overwhelmed sense. And again, it's not just the stress; it's the fact that they're doing everything they normally would be doing, and they're also carrying what we're all carrying. And that's just this. Whether you call it pandemic fatigue, whatever that is, I get the sense that people are on their last nerve, and having a week off is going to be a great thing for our staff. Interestingly, I mean, we're all different, right? And everybody has a different tolerance for stress. Some people actually thrive on stress, and other people are really damaged by it. And that goes for students, it goes for parents, our teachers, our administrators too, our support staff, and I'm sure even for board members. This whole cumulative effect of coping with a pandemic has effects that we don't even know about yet. But I can just tell, I can feel it, and I honestly can feel it myself. This has been a rough couple of weeks, and we need to help. We need to come together, and it's challenging. It's challenging for our whole country, but we really need to support each other. We need to take this week to regroup, to rejuvenate, and come back for the long run to the finish. And it is a long run. When we get back April 19th, we really don't have a big break until, well, we have a long weekend at Memorial Day, and then it's to the finish line. So it's a long stretch, and it's those long stretches that seem to build stress. So I encourage all of us to think about ways that we can take care of ourselves and take care of each other, to see it through. We've done such a great job to this point. When we get to summer and we have a chance to take a deep breath and of course begin the planning for the next school year, it'll be a lot different task than the one that we went through this past summer. It'll be happy compared to, if you think back to what we went through, even to figure out how we were going to start school and the task force work and all of that. That should be greatly diminished in terms of the chore that we had to start school. We need to take time once we get this to June to celebrate and really just to rejuvenate. So I again just will express my extreme gratitude. I know everybody, if I'm feeling the way I'm feeling, I know our teachers and our principals are feeling it twice, 3 times as much. And it's going to be okay. It will ultimately be okay. We're all going to be okay. We've gotten this far. We're going to be better than okay. Our kids have benefited. They're so lucky that you did what you did to this point. We just need to land it now. So thanks again, and look forward to everybody having a chance to take a deep breath and relax for a week.
Great. Thanks very much, Jay. Well said. And I can't express enough and say it enough, but thanks to you as well and everyone in the SAU offices, but all the administrators, the teachers, the support staff, and everyone else. It's just amazing that we've gotten to the point that we have. So we are thankful. And yes, please do rest next week. With that, Jamie, Business Administrators Report. There's a lot of documents in there.
Yes, there are. Let me find where I was. Hold on. I'm like multitasking here. Sorry. Okay. Okay, yes, lots of documents. End of the year projection is the very first one, unaudited, of course. It's usually, and it will show, it includes third quarter information, but it's actually cumulative. So it's not really technically a third quarter report. It's cumulative from the beginning of the year through April 6th. And that it's actually would have expenditures through this Friday. That was done on purpose to encompass the additional costs and encumbrances that are associated with the agreement that was reached with the teachers union. Okay, so when you take a look at it, revenues are going to be off. This is not a new discussion. We had this discussion back in, I think, December. The state reimbursements, that is a projection of how far off. Sometimes they surprise us and we get additional percentages of the special education reimbursements, and we won't know that until last year we found out the end of June. The 15,000 in other local revenue is predominantly earned interest on our accounts. As you know, interest rates are like non-existent at this point. So those are the bulk of the two issues in the revenue stream. Tuition has been posted here. We have 3 tuition students at Marion Cross School. There were a couple changes mid-year on that. And the expenditures are, I'm showing this by department, so it's easier for folks when they look through either the consolidated report that's attached or the expanded report that's the line item report with every single line item showing. If they want to take a look through that, it will line up better with this type of projection. The budgeted dollar amount is your first column. That's not changed. The year-to-date expenditures will line up with what you see on the budget report for the general fund. This is the 01 general fund. The encumbrances, some of them will line up, some of them will not. I have projected what I believe we will spend through the end of the fiscal year. So the encumbrances here will be higher than what your report's going to show. There are some different areas where we have some larger variances, and we have spoken about those prior. If I will for May probably expand this and show you the differences by it says object here, but these are actually departments. Objects would be the 100, 200, which is your salaries and benefits. I'm going to fix that column there and repost that. Sorry. The bulk, there is a large savings in salaries and benefits, approximately $223,000. We knew that at the beginning of the year. There were some changes in FTEs in the manner in which we filled FTEs, full-time equivalents, sorry, for folks in the different realms. We had a lot of turnover this year in the support staff realm with special education aides. Many of those hours and different duties were reassigned, and we hired teachers and or tutors into some of those roles. Obviously, we're kind of running a dual school, right, with remote education available as well as in person. So as folks take a look through the expanded appropriations report, you're going to see, that teachers' salaries are over in regular education. We have a bus monitor expenditure line that we didn't plan on having, right, in order to open the schools. We have overages in the remedial tutor lines. We have some, like our computer leasing line, which is in the regular instructional programming, is over because we had to make sure we had enough devices. With COVID, we couldn't share things as easily as we had in the past. There are some other lines where you'll see some savings, and the savings will hold. In the technology area, we did not fill, we left behind some FTEs there. In the ed assistant salary lines in special education, and you'll see a large surplus there, but in the same section, you're going to see speech teacher overages, as well as service lines that are over for tuition and speech therapy in the special education section. We, on some of the other sections, we are going to experience savings in the early education or triple E, what we call triple E lines. A lot of folks didn't send their students into the schools, right? They kept the students home and they homeschooled. In the extended school year section, the 1240s, we're going to have savings there that are not going to be spent out because the extended year program wasn't held last year in its normal environment. Let's see. Guidance is pretty much right on. Health is right on. Staff development, that was 21,000, will be left behind definitely for the enrichment grants, and that was a bargained decision between the school board and the teachers union. Media and libraries pretty much right on. School board services is over. That's predominantly mostly all legal fees, for various differing reasons, including negotiations, grievances, could be a host of things there. Dealing with COVID and what do we do? A lot of things. School administration's pretty much right on. Building maintenance is trending over a little bit. That's predominantly because we decided to pump our tanks and we hadn't, that's that 14,000, and that we hadn't been prepared to do that or hadn't budgeted ahead. Custodial services lines are down a little bit. And that's just some savings. We were able to cover a lot of the COVID costs for PPE in all of our realms with our CRF money that I'm going to speak about here shortly. Grounds maintenance is pretty much right on. The student transportation line here, the to and from, that is not going to match your budgeted line items. We had some changes there this year and we fully encumbered the line, and we are just waiting on the discount that's going to be coming back to us from that contract. Special education transportation's pretty much right on. Field trips, we're not planning on taking them right now due to the environment with the pandemic. Site improvements, building improvements, we're going to spend those lines out. I've projected that we'll spend them out on all the projects that we've been sitting on. Debt service is right on, and F&R food service transfer, we're going to experience quite a surplus there, due in part to the fact that most of our F&R students, or a lot of them, had been withdrawn for homeschool as some of them moved. And we, effective January, embarked on the summer food service programming, which is a part of the COVID relief funds, whereby everybody in the school district who would like to participate in breakfast and lunch can do so free of charge. And that's being covered by the USDA programming. So when we boil all that down, and I'm sorry, there's an extra page there. When we boil all that down, we have the potential revenue variance against the expenditure variance and a projected fund balance of $222,198. Okay, we'll see how good I am at projecting in July when we wrap up the books. I'm going to pause there and ask if there are any questions before I brief you on the other funds. And I will write up a narrative for the end of the year. Okay, I haven't abandoned the narratives. I apologize, because I was much better at doing the narratives before the world went upside down.
Any questions for Jamie at this point? Neil?
Jamie, just briefly, and maybe it's just because you haven't updated it yet, the encumbered amount on the school board services is showing a larger number in this first document than it is in the other detailed one.
Correct, because I am encumbering more money than what shows in the report, because I know we have legal fees still coming in.
Okay.
Yeah. That's the legal fees that I know are coming.
Okay.
It's a projection, and I might have projected a little bit high, but I'd rather go high than go low.
Okay.
Okay, so if and when you have time to take a look at, it will say Federal Projects 02 Fund. Those are all of our grants. Right now, we've been bestowed grant funds in the amount of $399,760, or I should say we have access to. Of that amount, we have actually spent year to date $271,444.73, with another encumbrance of $7,039.31. That leaves a balance remaining available of $121,276. We can only spend what we're bestowed. It's not a taxable, it doesn't trigger any taxable events. This does include our CRF LEA grant. That was the big one that we got for the first part of the year of the $110,103. It does not include or show the ESSER 2 grant, as that just barely opened and we haven't filed our application. We were bestowed up to $75,507, and we've met to discuss what we'll be using, some of the things we'll be using that for moving forward into the next fiscal year. There is also an ESSER 3 grant, which is coming out. We know our dollar amount already is $205,173. I think Jay alluded to that earlier. I was multitasking, I'm sorry. That one will come with definitive requirements for expenditures. That's just barely been released to the AOE for them to go through and decide how to administer it. It has not been opened up yet for application. So that's your federal projects funds. Let's see, the other two right now that I'll talk about is the food service funds. That's 04. Right now, you would look at this and go, oh my God, we're upside down, we're losing money. No, actually, we're not. We have fully encumbered the total cost of the program for the whole fiscal year. That's why you'll see an encumbrance in the expenditure section, bigger than what we had originally budgeted, because we didn't know when we did our budget in September or August, actually, that we were going to embark on the summer food service program. So that's why if you look at the budget balance for expenditures, it's going to show that we're $60,000 over in our contracted services programming. It's okay. We're going to have the offsetting revenue up here by the end of the fiscal year. You'll see we have two revenue streams. The first one of $22,970, which says food service revenue, was from our sales. And then if you look further down, the fourth line down says COVID AOE, January through June. That's our summer food service program. We've been billing between $9,000 and $11,000 a month for January and February. So projecting forward $9,000 a month, that's approximately $27,000 more. And I'm thinking about $5,000 for June. We should end the year approximately in a positive position of about $9,000. Which that money can be used according to the summer food service program and the AOE to do upgrades in our food service program. So we'll be chatting about those shortly. And the final one would be that I would talk to tonight for, financial reports, would be the Medicaid fund. That's 05. Medicaid fund reimbursables have been very slow this year across New Hampshire and Vermont, both states. I've been in contact with our Medicare processor. It's done in-house at the SAU office. There's been many regulation changes surrounding Medicaid reimbursables. Again, we've had students who would normally be enrolled in this program of reimbursement who were pulled out and or moved away from the district. Obtaining some medical certifications has been problematic. That's one of the changes that they've done during COVID times, people not being in person. So right now we rolled over from last year $57,676 because you can roll these monies. Normally this money is earmarked to offset a section of the salary and tutoring lines, which it's allowed to be used for. We had money come in late last year. That's why we're sitting on so much here. And then right now we have only been reimbursed $1,720 for the 2021 year, but I do know that we are in the process of billing out more. But I don't have a projection right now for what that will look like. The last item here tonight is hot off the press. We just got it this afternoon, is the Norwich School District Audit Report from the 1920 fiscal year. And please feel free to look through it. I'm not going to ask you if you have questions tonight. It's a very large document. There are no surprises within it. We had an opportunity to look at a really early draft back when we started it in, I think it was September. And so the easiest, quickest pages to look at would be the schedules in the very back. That really tells the tale of what we ended with for the 1920 year. It will show you, Schedule 1 shows you the estimated and actual revenues, and it will show you what the variances were. The variances for our revenues were positive last year of 61,302. It will then on Schedule 2 show you the schedules of expenditures. This is on pages 53, 54, 55, 56. And it shows you, similar to how we report, it will show you the numbers by pretty much by the departments or the functions, but they don't use the actual coding. We ended, as we thought we would, in a positive variance. We closed schools down last year in March. So, you know, running remotely, while some of the lines were over, most of them were under. So it looks like we ended with $139,789. We had an Schedule 3 shows you the unassigned fund balance. So all totaled, the 1920 budget surplus was $201,091. We rolled forward 491,294. In Vermont, that will show a 2-year cumulative number. Then you'll see the unassigned fund balance that we use to reduce school district assessment. That's the number we use in our budget as an offset. And so that happens every year. In Vermont, you do that on a, New Hampshire is different. They do it real time. In Vermont, you do it on a 2-year lag or a 1-year lag. So you know the number you have when you start your budget. Then Schedule 4 is the combining balance sheet for the non-major funds. You'll see the food service fund here. You have a special gifts fund. That's where some of your PTO monies and other different donations and gifts sit. Then the Medicaid fund shows you all of where those ended for last year. And then Schedule 5 shows you change in fund balances as combined for the special revenue funds. Okay, so take a look at all of that. It's a large report, and I'm happy to speak to it next month. I'm sorry it came in so late. They were holding it hostage, waiting for a legal document. I've also shared with the school board the audit governance letter. Please take a look at that. Once we've had a chance to discuss that, which I'll do next month, we can probably make that public. It's just sometimes you don't share certain sections of it because it is a governance letter that's meant for the school board from the auditors. There were no significant findings with our audit this year. That's it for me.
Well, thank you for all your good work on that, or at least having all your good work verified by that. I do need to sign something at some point, correct? When is that coming in, and when would you need me to do that?
Are we talking about the union agreement?
No, isn't it? Don't I sign off on the part of the audit here too? I thought that was a required.
No, you signed the beginning letter. So
the beginning. Okay.
Yes, the beginning letter.
Not
Jay
the
and I get
results.
to sign that ending letter.
Okay. All right. I'm confused again. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Any questions on the audit or anything else Jamie has just presented this evening? All right. Well, thank you for the very thorough overview, and please do review that, and we'll have a chance to reference again at the next meeting. Final item here in reports is the committee reports. I have one update on the negotiations committee, and this is with regard to the support staff. So we are headed to mediation with the support staff and did get a date scheduled with them for April 29th. So Jamie, Neil, and I, working with our legal support, Chris Leopold, will meet in mediation with the support staff on that afternoon of April 29th, and hope to come to a resolution soon thereafter. The only other thing I'll report in the committee reports is that I'd like to thank the board members for signing on to committees for the upcoming year, and I'll just read them off because people can shout at me if I've gotten this wrong at this point in time. So for the budget committee, Tom, Neil, and Garrett, negotiations with the teachers, and we will have to re-enter into negotiations in the September, October timeframe, Tom and Neil. Negotiations with the support staff, Tom, Neil, and Lisa. Enrichment grants, Lisa and Kelly. VSBA liaison, Neil. PTO liaison, Kelly. And though we've turned over much of the policy work to the policy committee at the SAU level, Kelly, I've maintained the policy committee here for any time when we may need to review anything that's Vermont specific. Did I get all of that right? Speak now or forever hold your peace and participate in those committee meetings in the upcoming year. All right, thank you. Oh, Jamie.
Could you share that list with us? That would be great because I don't write that
Yep.
fast.
No, yes, and I've actually got a full spreadsheet that I put together a few years ago. I'm working on with the rest of the board chairs, and
Right.
once that's all consolidated, we're already working with Ryan to get it on the website too. So, but I'll pass that along to everybody.
Great, thanks.
You're welcome. And with that, I do have need for an executive session. So if someone would enter us into that, the motion is in board docs. Lisa.
Sorry to switch screens. Motion to enter into executive session in accordance with Title I, Section 313 for purposes of discussing personnel.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Oh, sorry, Jay.
I was going to say, I won't need any administrative support in executive session. So if you folks want to call it a night, that's well deserved.
Okay. I should take a second first too. Was that Kelly? Yes. And let me go around the room here. All in favor of entering into executive session. Neil.
Oh, yes.
Kelly.
Percy, yes.
Garrett.
Garrett, yes.
Lisa.
Christie, yes?
And Camden, yes. And thank you, Jay, for that comment. And we will not have need to really come back into public session here, although we've got a few items we will need to obviously adjourn after the non-public. Jessica, thank you very much for the note taking as always very thorough, and appreciate all your time here, especially after hours. So thanks. And everyone's got the non-public link, is that correct?
Yep.
All right, I will see you over there. Thank you very much, everyone. Okay. Oh, and we're all back. Great.
That's fast.
That was good work, everyone. Thank you.
After 13 months, we're good at this.
All right. So as I mentioned, there's not much less. We just have agenda topics for the next meeting. We've obviously already got the outline for us there. Please send me anything between now and then to add to the agenda if you don't see it on the template. And other than that, our next regular meeting is Wednesday, May 5th. And I would be happy to entertain a motion to adjourn this evening. Kelly.
Move to adjourn at 9:06 p.m.
Thank you. Seconded by Lisa. And we'll do the roll call, starting with Neil. All in favor?
Odell, yes.
Garrett.
Yes.
Kelly.
Percy, yes.
Lisa.
Christy, yes.
And Camden, yes. Thank you all. Thanks, Jay. And thank you, as always, Josh, for sticking around in the background there. Very much appreciated.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Have a good night, everybody.
Thanks,
Night, all.
everybody.
Take care.
Thanks, Josh.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.